I thought I'd talk about the history of the FDC League leading up to our first season. The foundation of this league is obviously tied to my experience in sim racing. I've been playing racing games over the years, but the first league I was in was for F1 2010. I used an Xbox 360 controller and drove a Lotus, and since then I've kept the same green and yellow colour scheme. It was a Spanish league and they were all really friendly, and if there was ever a problem like the game crashed at the end of qualifying, then we just all happily agreed to do a rolling start. So on the first lap we might slowly get back into our qualifying positions. There was a lot of sportsmanship involved, and that experience more or less gripped my interest in league racing. I helped them by making the championship standings, although I was young and made mistakes and sometimes struggled to enjoy it. The next one was such a cultural contrast to that. I was doing some videos and got invited to a league in F1 2010, and rather than doing it for fun and sportsmanship, it was being run for the sake of YouTube monetization. So rather than people being invited for how friendly or clean they were being invited just because they were making videos on YouTube. I didn't even get to the first corner of the first race before I was pushed off track. And because the Codemasters games have bad penalties, of course I got an automatic penalty for it, and later on got sandwiched. So I wanted the league to be clean, and for drivers to be accountable for what their car does, and for unfair penalties to be removed, even if it meant changing the race result. But making changes was an uphill battle in that league, and I should have just left them to it, because my vision and theirs were so different. Some of them didn't understand my motivation at all. The only penalty I remember being allowed to hand out when I helped manage it was for a driver to miss qualifying, but the tyre wear rate was so high in qualifying that starting with fresh tyres in the race could actually be an advantage, keeping in mind that the grid limit back then was a maximum of 12 cars, so considering attendance, if you miss qualifying then you're only on the 5th row of the grid, so on fresh tyres you could just drive past the few cars ahead of you. I felt like I could never commit to a corner because the driver behind would run you off the road or dive in, and they'd blame it on lag, but they wouldn't take any accountability and some just didn't give positions back, so the driving standards were low. I felt that the penalties were ineffective, and I said we should change the race results because it didn't seem fair, but I think I was in a minority on that, and I ended up not enjoying it and left. All the nice guys I'd invited from the Spanish league had left. Before I left I tried to find someone to take my place updating the standings, and there were Xbox and PlayStation leagues and a website, but the credits for the work I'd done were quickly removed after I left. And after I pointed that out to the founder and my credits were added back to the website, someone removed it again. It really doesn't matter, but I think it's respectful to have someone's name on their work. So the disrespect of my name being removed twice I think summed everything up. But even after that, my YouTube videos were mysteriously getting dislikes within a minute of me posting them, even if I'd posted them early in the morning. So it looked like someone at that point had put some kind of bot on my channel that disliked all the videos that I published. Looking back, the idea for that league was probably just networking for people who were trying to make it big on YouTube, where if we all did videos, then we'd all get lots of exposure and share subscribers. And some of them were doing clickbait and using false keywords, or using misleading thumbnails. And that's not my style because video editing is just a creative outlet. I'm not doing it to try and make money. To me, the priority in sim racing was always about sportsmanship. And trying to make it big on YouTube, some of them had an obsession with liking videos, you know, the whole like and subscribe thing. I more or less moved away from sim racing as a result of all of that. Collectively those guys had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers, and I felt like the sportsmanship that was so important to me was an unpopular idea. But I shouldn't have worried so much, because their growth on YouTube wasn't exactly organic. Monetization really boosted the visibility of their videos, and some of them knew how to game the system to make the videos come up when they shouldn't do. Like if I listed all my favourite F1 drivers in the description of a video, then people searching, for example, for Fernando Alonso would see that video, but it obviously would have nothing to do with Fernando Alonso. And I know it works this way because my videos, which were not monetized, were buried under their ones, even if I had searched directly for my own videos. And even if what they were doing gained a lot of attention, there were still guys like the Spanish drivers I raced with that enjoyed sportsmanship like I did. If I was going to be in a league in future, I knew I wanted it to be clean, and I wanted to have clear rules, and I wanted to remove unfair penalties. So being in those two leagues, one that was about sportsmanship and one that often disregarded sportsmanship, had given me a clear idea of what I wanted to do in future. The original idea for the format of this league was inspired by Formula Sim Racing, and they've been doing highlight videos for open wheel sim racing in rFactor since 2010. They had talent like Jack Nicholls for commentary, and of course Bonahuis winning a lot of the races. I wanted to do something in Race 07, and back when Codemasters did F1 2010, Simbin did their own expansion for Race 07, called the Formula Race Room expansion. It was basically the 2010 cars, but obviously Codemasters got the official F1 license. As far as I know, the reason why I went to Codemasters was because they were willing to do versions for Xbox and PlayStation. But the sound you hear in the intro to FDC videos is still one of those old race room cars. I tried recording it in F1 2019, but you get so little control over the cameras that I couldn't get more than a couple of seconds of audio from the car driving past the camera, so I had to do it in Race 07 where you get full race replays and camera control. The Formula SimRacing League had multiple seasons running at the same time, and I wanted to use that kind of format, either the fastest or most experienced in one group, and the newer drivers in another, and do highlight videos like FSR were producing. So I called it the FDC, which at the time was the Formula Divisional Championship, but people wanted all sorts of different cars, so the project was too difficult, and obviously Race 07 ended up with very few players as time went on. The project needed to be simple, but still have several drivers supporting it. We did some groundwork, but with the difficulty of the project, and how much of a disaster that previous league had been, I walked away from sim racing. So years later, after doing a whole bunch of other stuff, I was feeling nostalgic for that old Spanish league. I finally tried to commit to running a racing league single-handedly. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but obviously I had the experience and some motivation. So I advertised for drivers, and we did some small test races, and then the test league, and we slowly grew from there. F1 2019 looks simple and popular, so I think that was the obvious choice to start up a casual league. I did some testing in it, and it was a bit rough around the edges, but I could clearly see it working. Race 07 had custom skins, good physics and full race replays, which would have been useful for highlight videos, but it was 12 years old by that point. They were the two games I had experience with, so I went with F1 2019. The test league makes sense to iron out any potential problems, and I used that time in those races to help advertise for more drivers. Recycle Finn, despite only coming in for the last 2/3 of the league, managed to win it, ahead of Comet, who changed his name to Justice, and Mondorian with some good results in third. I'm glad we did a test league first, because there were some problems that we had to find solutions to, and it was great starting the full season with a few extra cars. With only one season at a time, and hoping to attract friendly drivers to promote sportsmanship, I decided to change the FDC name from the Formula Divisional Championship to the Friendly Drivers Championship. Thanks to the people that helped bring this league to life. It was a long road, but we got there in the end.